I want to start with a football question and really a meat and potatoes style of question for this show and this listenership. So let's go over to the mailbag. Joseph writes in and he says, "Hi, Joel. I have a theory that there will be another 10 or maybe 20-year war between Ohio State and Michigan with many national championships between them. What are your thoughts on this?" Okay, let's break this down. First and foremost, I think that you're referring, Joseph, back to the actual 10-year war, which took place from 1969 to 1978. Remember, in 1968, Ohio State wins a national championship, and then Bo becomes the head coach at Michigan, and the 10-year war ensues. Really, I don't know what, kind of a mythical period, really, in college football, and in a period that the fan bases of each of those teams look back on with a great deal of nostalgia. Nothing lasts for 20 years in college football, and in particular in this day and age. The sport is moving way too fast. Coaches get hired and fired. If we have 10 straight years from this point moving forward, or even dating back to the first time that Jim Harbaugh and Ryan faced each other and moving forward, I would be surprised if we got 10 straight years of just that coaching matchup. So let's just start with that, okay? College football moves way too fast for there to be something similar to what we got from Bo and Woody from 1969 to 1978. So that's number one. Number two, Joseph, is that you imply that there will be many national championships between them, as if there were many national championships between them in the 10-year war that we know of, that's been documented, right? From, again, 69 to 78, which is just not the case. In fact, Bo Schembechler didn't win a national championship at Michigan. The only national championship that was won during the 10-year war, the actual 10-year war, was a split national championship, I believe in 70, when Ohio State shared a national championship with Nebraska and there was one other, Texas, in 1970. So we had like the three-way national championship. Normally you got to pay more for that cotton. And that was it. So like even in the 10-year war, this period that these two fan bases like to look back on and be like, oh, that's when we dominated the sport. It wasn't necessarily true. Now, the rivalry was incredible during that time and at times even before and after. But this notion that these two were winning many national championships during this time is false. Ohio State won it in 68, shared it in a three-way in 1970. Thank you, Cotton. And that's what we got. So now let's look at, just from the competitive standpoint, are we entering or are we in the middle of a 10-year war? I would argue that the win for Michigan, not this year, but last year, started a new period within this rivalry where we get a little bit more, let's call it parity, competitiveness, whatever you want to call it. Because before that, for the last 2 decades, it hasn't even really been close. It had been totally dominated by the Buckeyes, and everyone knows it. I'm not throwing cold water on anybody here. Everybody knows it. Now, 2 straight years we've seen Michigan win, one at home, one on the road in Columbus. And so I think that you can make an argument that like, hey, we're entering into, or we're now currently in a period where like this thing is salty and there is a serious rivalry. And I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that. I think that in hindsight, when we look back on this period of time, these last couple of years, and maybe this year coming up and the year after, when we look back on this period of time, we are going to remember it as a highly competitive rivalry, and a rivalry in which there's a lot of subtext and undertones. The coaches don't really love each other. A lot going on, right? And so because of that, yes, we are in the middle of what you can categorize as a war. Do I think it's going to last 10 years? Probably not, but that's more the cyclical nature of college football than anything else, which leads us to there will be many national championships between the two of them. Hard for me to fathom that. And it goes in part to a question I answered really a couple of weeks ago when a Penn State fan asked the question of, like, do you think Penn State will win a national championship in my lifetime? Listen, I hope as a college football fan that we start generating more parity at the top of college football. But right now, that's a hope and not a prediction, because what we are experiencing, and in part because of the structure of the sport, but what we are experiencing is a non-parity portion of college football. We know who's going to be there at the end, and we know because we know who has the best players. Remember, recruiting drives everything. And now you can categorize recruiting as high school players and transfer players, the combination of the two. And the fact remains, the teams that are dominating college football at the top and winning championships are also dominating in recruiting. And so they're getting the best players, which in my mind leads me to believe that they will continue to win national championships. The only team of the two that has recruited at a level that would suggest that they can go and compete for a national championship is Ohio State. What has been shocking to me over the last couple of years is that Michigan hasn't really capitalized on these back-to-back playoff appearances, these wins over Ohio State, and in particular in this year's recruiting class, they fell behind. I believe that to win a national championship, you have to have a 4-year rolling average in terms of a combined recruiting class of around 5. If you're not in the top 5, you probably don't have the athletes or the roster necessary to go compete with Alabama or Georgia or even Ohio State for that matter. So because of that, I don't think we are getting into a period where you're going to see many national championships between Michigan and Ohio State. Now, could that change? Maybe. And the only maybe comes in because we don't know how conference realignment and the expansion of the playoff is going to affect parity in college football moving forward. We don't know how it's going to affect it. We've already seen a small snippet, by the way, but a small sample size of the transfer portal really increasing parity on a year-in and year-out basis last year with TCU, USC, Washington. You saw some major jumps in teams being able to compete at the highest level because of the transfer portal. If that continues, then maybe we'll see the national championship start to move around a little bit. There's only one school that has recruited at a level that you would suggest, hey, like they can go and win some national championships, and that's Ohio State. I haven't seen that from Michigan yet, even though they've been right there and in the playoff. So, Joseph, that's a long answer to a simple question there about the 10-year war.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.